So to make a bleeding wound, what you will need is tubing for the blood transfer, a pump, something like this, or like weed killer pump stuff will work just fine. You need cling film, latex, blood of course, and then your prosthetic to hide the blood bladder. Anything will do. So step one would to be make the bladder itself. So what you do is you work out how big you want your bit to be underneath the prosthetic, and you sort of, so we'll draw that out, and then you get your tubing and you essentially make a bit that would be big enough to be able to insert your tubing later, and then you draw the shape that you want. You want to make sure that your shape would still be able to be hidden underneath the prosthetic. So the next step would be to just add latex and build it up until you have a firm base. You can use a hairdryer to speed up the drying process through this point. So now that this is dry, I've built up a layer between 3 and 4 when I use Meron because it's quite thick, but if you're using a thin latex it might take more. We do the hard bit, which is cutting out some cling film so that it's just in the size of this, so that there's still latex at each side, and this is just so that when we apply more latex it doesn't just stick to itself. If you're using a hairdryer here, use it at a cooler temperature so as not to melt the plastic. So once it's all dried, powder it up and then carefully peel it, powdering it as you go along to stop it sticking to itself. When you finish, you should be left with this. Make sure you have a bit poking at the edge so you can grab it. You're going to want to blow it up so it's like a balloon to make sure it has no holes in it, and then once you've done that you can cut little holes in it so that the blood can pour out. If you want the blood to shoot out quickly, you'd cut them really small, and if you want it to more pour out, you'd cut them a bit longer. And there's your bladder, which is the first part. So to attach the prosthetic and blood bladder, if you're using silicone specifically, I would recommend adhesive such as Prosaid, acetone to melt down the edges, and then an alcohol activated to get to your blood potent, and obviously alcohol, as well as your tubing and blood from yesterday. So when it comes to applying your prosthetic, I would recommend putting it up somewhere quite high, like at your trousers, just so that when you have your blood bag, the top bit is hidden by the clothing, and then you can put the tubes up under your trousers and up your top or whatever, depending on where you're applying it. So I reckon about here. So then I would get a bit of the prosthetic and I'd make sure that the whole side is up, and then hide that obviously under my clothes also. I'm going to be using the Prosaid once again just to attach the blood bag. So to use Prosaid, you put a bit on, oops, and then you kind of wait until it's gone clear before you attach the thing, and that way it stays pretty much stuck down. You don't want to attach this completely stuck down, like so that it still has a bit of movement but still pretty stuck down. And then you just basically do the same here and then stick this down. So once you've got your prosthetic stuck down, making sure the top bit's loose where your blood bladder is stuck, you start to use acetone to slowly sort of take off the edge and dissolve the sides of the prosthetic. Now, if you're using a different type of Prosthetics such as latex, you just stick that down as normal. So once you've dissolved the edges, you want to get Prozaid and once again put it on top of them just to hide them a bit more. Ideally you'd use Prozaid paste to hide bits like this, especially because I've made a mistake and accidentally folded it in. But I find that Prozaid works just as good at times, especially when you've done thinner edges such as the ones at this side. So once it's dry, you want to powder it just to get rid of some of the shine. And then once it's all powdered, you're going to want to paint it. I recommend alcohol paints and sort of a brush like this, so you can do it in a sort of flicking motion, or even a cheap toothbrush I find works. So finally what you want to do before you do the last bit is you stick the tube through it to make sure everything is stuck down right, and then you apply your blood. So I am applying scab blood first to the inside of the wound because I just like how it looks. It adds dimension, I think, especially if you put it round about the bottom to hide the blood bladder itself. Also like to mix a bit of blood with some KY jelly because that once again gives another type of blood texture with like where it's a bit more light in what you'd find in like the edges of cuts and stuff with a liquidy. There you go. All you need to do is fill up your tube or your whatever you're using with the blood and insert it into the tube and squeeze.